Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Steadfast Podcast. Jessie here, owner and therapist at Steadfast Christian Counseling. I'm so glad you're here. Last week, we had an incredible conversation with Becky Castle Miller about emotional formation. And so if you missed that one, I really encourage you to go back and give that a listen. I am still thinking about it, and there were just so many things that I think I'll be wrestling with and kind of pondering on for a while. So it was really rich and deep. Becky brought so much wisdom and clarity about how we form emotions. And as believers, when we're welcomed into the kingdom of God, I mean, we see through the Gospels Jesus discipling our emotions. And so just to really be thoughtful as we're reading scripture about what we're noticing in those areas is really cool. And it's a perfect foundation for today's conversation because we're going to, for the next couple weeks, kind of be talking about building secure attachment with our kids. And today is a really practical and fun episode for that. So while you're catching up, make sure that you connect with us wherever you listen. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Spotify, and iTunes. We upload the video versions of these podcasts every week on YouTube. This one is going to be kind of short and practical because it's just me today. But on these episodes, when we have guests come in, like last week with Becky, and then we'll have Sheila Ray Gregoire coming in a couple weeks, those conversations will be a bit longer. And so I'm going to keep my promise to you guys to have 30-minute episodes as far as the audio goes, but you can hop over to YouTube and see the full episode, which is kind of cool. So make sure you hit subscribe and make sure you share it with your friends, because this is kind of a way that we want to give back to the community. And so these conversations are meant to be passed along for that reason. So share away. One more thing before we jump in. If you're a parent, there's no better time to hop back into therapy than during the school year. I know that for Corey and I, we kind of take a pause on our couples therapy when the kids are home in the summertime, and also on individual therapy. And so to jump back in once school starts and those fall rhythms give a little bit more structure, it's just such a wise thing to do. Like you might be hopping back into a gym membership or going for a walk in the neighborhood. I'm trying to build those routines, make therapy part of that. As we're going to talk about attachment in these next couple weeks, this is going to become more and more clear, but it's so important that we unpack our suitcases, our emotional suitcases as parents, because if we don't, and you can think about this in your own life, but you're going to just hand that suitcase to your kids someday. So they're going to lug their stuff in your stuff. So it's really important to unpack your stuff so that you can show up more fully for the next generation. When we do that, we stop passing our unprocessed luggage trauma onto our kids' future. It really is one of the greatest gifts as a mother, as a parent, that you can give to your kids to work through your own stuff. So one of the things that I say a lot is that therapy helps people move from a place of reactivity to a place of agency. Or I had, shout out to Britt Moore, my youth pastor growing up, he said, we want to act and not react. And I think that that is what therapy does. It helps us move from a place of a lot of times living reactively in ways that we may not even be aware of, to becoming more self-aware, working through our places of hurt and trauma, and then having decision and agency over how we show up in the world. So that's kind of what therapy does for you. And we're going to talk about this moving forward. The therapist and I talk about it a lot, but sometimes there's this misconception that therapy is like a lifelong sentence. Like if I step into doing therapy, I'm going to be doing it my whole life. Like if you sign up for childcare at church or something, you're going to be serving in that nursery, till you're old and gray. That's not what therapy is. So a lot of times we work with people for 8 to 12 weeks at a time. And there's so much good stuff. And I'm doing this thing with my hand if you see me on YouTube right now, but it's like I'm tilling up the soil with my hand. There's so much good work that gets done in that time that a lot of times we call that the working phase. And then after that, you move to a maintenance phase where you just see your therapist periodically or even as needed when you start noticing maybe things coming up. But it's not like if I reach out to a therapist that I'm going to spend the rest of my life in therapy. No, that's not it at all. So we just want to free you from that I'm going to give you today 3.5 things. We're going to call them rhythms that you can start adding in after school or when you have free time if you're homeschooling your kids that really can build that connection with them. So, as parents, one of our most important jobs is to be a safe place for our kids. We want to be a steady harbor that they can return to after being out in the seas of the world. That's what we're going to talk about today. How to strengthen secure attachment with our kids, especially in those small but powerful after school moments. Now, listen, I'm speaking to people with school age kids right now, but one of the things I want you to hear me say, even if I don't explicitly say it, is with attachment, this isn't something we grow out of. Yes, there's been a ton of research done with like birth to 3 and what we know about attachment, but just because there's been a ton of research done here, there's also been research done across the lifespan. We have the most research from birth to 3, and that's why I think those years get highlighted so much. But if you are a parent with adult kids, you can still repair and build secure attachments with those kids no matter what you've been through. There's so much healing that can be done that is so beautiful, and you can build these secure attachments even with adult children. So it's never too late. In fact, the number one ingredient for building secure attachment is repair. So beautiful. But today I'm going to share 3.5 rhythms that you can build into your afternoons and evenings to help you connect, to help you attune, and to offer co-regulation to your kids. And yes, I said 3.5 because one of them is so small that you might be tempted to skip it, but don't. It's super powerful. Okay. So I live here in Charleston, South Carolina. So what came to my mind as I was preparing this was a picture of a harbor. We see it. We have our Charleston harbor. We have boats coming in and out all the time. Some boats come after a smooth, beautiful trip on the water. And then others come when it's kind of been pretty bad out. But when they return, they all need the same thing. They need a harbor. They need a place to tie up, a place to rest, a place to be cleaned, and a place to prepare for tomorrow. And that's our job as parents. We are the harbor, not the house. We're not talking about your house, not the physical space, but it's us. It's our presence, our steadiness, our attunement. That's what creates safety. This is where co-regulation comes in, okay? Annalise was with us last week on the podcast with Becky Castle Miller. She's one of our therapists at Steadfast, and she and I do a lot of parenting classes together. And one of the things that she always says to parents that I love is we have to learn that we are the regulated brain in the room. I mean, even from a brain development standpoint, they're not even there yet, but we have to be the regulated brain in the room. That's why a lot of what we do with parents is like, we got to work on unpacking our own stuff. Like I said earlier, okay, we've got to know how we're showing up so that we can provide that co-regulation, so we can be that regulated brain. So co-regulation is simply our nervous system helping to regulate our child's nervous system. When we're able to stay calm, and I don't even know right now, you might just pick up on how I'm even slowing down the cadence of the way that I'm speaking. This is a little hack that I use to co-regulate. When I have a kid that's bouncing off the walls for whatever reason, I try to go low and slow. I will lower my speed at which I'm speaking. I'll lower my tone, and I will even sometimes lower my body to their level if it's one of my small humans so that we're face to face. I'll get on the ground, I'll sit down. And then a lot of times they'll sit down with me, and that's a big regulation thing, or they'll get right in my lap, which is even better. When we stay calm, steady, and open, our kids can settle. We don't have to be perfect. Please don't hear me ever say that. We just need to show up as a safe space over and over and over and over again so that they know, okay, mom and dad, safe space. I can release here. I can rest here. What is really neat about what happens in the brain at that time is like sometimes when a child or an adult is dysregulated, it's really hard. And we talked about this a little bit last week with the topic of emotional formation, but it's really hard to even be able to articulate how we're feeling because that part of the brain is not even online at that time for us to be able to really even synthesize the situation. Sometimes we're just in fight or flight. We're just like, we are just reactive. And so what this co-regulation can do is I can lend you my nervous system for a second. And I can do that through just being calm in the space. If your child feels comfortable and safe with it, it's a hug. It's a nearness of them, just like the little ones, just coming and crawling up in your lap for a second. Sometimes it's taking them outside if they're dysregulated. I used to do that a lot when I had a crying baby. I would just walk outside. And there's something about being outside and hearing all these sounds and holding them. I'm starting to rock right now if you're watching me on YouTube, but you know that mama rock, right? You scoop that baby up and then we just get in that rhythm. And that is a picture of co-regulation. I'm going to give you the 3.5 after school rhythms. Okay. Rhythm number 1, the first 5 minutes. So when your child walks through the door after school, I want you to picture yourself like a baseball glove. I have a house full of baseball and softball players. And as an individual, talk to my team a lot, talk to my family a lot about living life with a bat in your hand instead of a glove. Now, I don't mean that in any kind of like crazy violent way. I just mean like live your life on offense. Go after the things you want. Like be aggressive. You know, like we say to the kids when they're playing baseball and softball, like don't leave it up to the umpire. You are in charge of the at bat. Live your life that way, swinging for the fences, right? I think parenting is a little bit different. I think parenting is we are like a really great middle infield. So we're living life with a glove on. And if you watch a really good defensive player, they are so attuned to the batter and to the game that they almost know what's going to happen before it happens. If you watch a major league shortstop, watch him move even before the ball is hit. He's able to react because he's attuned, because he's learned. He has really perfected that skill of attunement to the batter. And we as parents need to, across the lifespan, perfect that skill of attunement. So I want you to picture yourself like that great middle infielder with a baseball glove on. You're ready to receive whatever they toss your way. But here's the guardrail, okay? This is where we start putting the bat back in our hands. Don't pelt them with questions. Don't like, hey, so what did this person do? What did that person do? What did this person do? What did that person do? My sister-in-law told me one time that she asks her kids 2 questions when they come home from school. What did you eat for lunch? And what was your special area today? And that kind of gets the conversation going. But beyond that, like we are not pelting them with questions. We're here. We're present. We're awaiting. We're open. We're ready. And we're receptive. A smile, a hug, if they want one, calm body language. These things say, I'm here. I see you. I'm glad you're home. There's a great book called The Joy Switch that I highly recommend, and it's based in attachment. But one of the things that this guy talks about in this book, and I'll link it in the show notes, he talks about the science of joy, but he talks about what happens when we allow our face to light up when we see somebody else. So when my kids come home, for them to hear in my tone and for them to see on my face, like, what's up? I'm glad you're home. How you doing, bud? Is really important. Okay. So if they toss you something, be ready to catch it. If not, just hold your glove open. That posture alone communicates safety to them. Okay. So that's number 1. Number 2, snack and share. Have food. I think across the lifespan, like I even think about like, my granny, she always had food to eat. One girl I went to grad school with, she gave this great speech one time on refrigerator people and how that's just a perfect example of like closeness. If you've got somebody that you feel close enough where you can just go open up their fridge and start like looking through there to see what they have, I guarantee you're close with that person. You feel safe. So snack and share. Food has a way of softening the edges of the day. A simple snack together, popcorn, apple slices, whatever you like. That just kind of creates space for conversation. The key here is not forcing the talk like we said before. Let them lead the pace. Sometimes it's just sitting there and quiet. Sometimes it's a funny story. Either way, the snack table becomes a safe little harbor. Number 3, play or presence. So next, give them a short child-led pocket of time. 10 minutes of shooting basketball outside. Maybe we're drawing and coloring. We go for a walk with the dog. My 12-year-old son wanted to go to the driving range yesterday, and we hit some golf balls and had a blast. We laughed at how many times we absolutely missed the golf balls. We had a good time. Sometimes it's just sitting nearby while they just decompress. Just your nearness is enough. You do not have to have some profound, deep conversation with them. This rhythm says your world matters. I care about what lights you up. Doesn't have to be long. It's about quality and attunement, not quantity. Now the half, okay? 3.5. The micro gesture. I love this. It's something so small that it almost like we almost would forget about it, but it counts. It really does count. So this could be a wink. It could be a funny handshake. It could be a note in their backpack. It could be a quick text to your older kids. For me, I think it really comes down to when you get the urge to reach out, reach out. I was just talking to a friend earlier today about just this idea of, I remember I was driving, I think I was in Carline last year, and this woman was walking on the sidewalk and I loved her jacket. And I yelled out, I was like, I love your jacket. But it's not withholding these things that come up for us that I think those are just so important golden moments. And you don't know what that's going to do for somebody else in their day. And I think our job is to just like be generous when those things come up. When you think of somebody, like take 2 seconds and send them a text. If you're on a walk and you hear a song and it reminds you of somebody, send it to them. Hey, I was just walking. I heard this song. I thought you might like it. Those things matter. Okay. So I'll give you an example yesterday with one of my kids. My 8-year-old was telling Corey and I a story about soccer practice last night and all these things that they were doing. And we were hearing them. They played a really fun game, SpongeBob SquarePants game. We were hearing about it. And as she was telling me, our 10-year-old was sitting on the back of the couch listening to her as well. And I just happened to glance over at my 10-year-old and it struck me like just how beautiful she is, like without even trying. She was just zoned into her sister's conversation. She wasn't like trying to look a certain way. She was just sitting there and I just thought, gosh, she's beautiful. And so I was like, I'm going to tell her that. And so this morning when we were getting ready for school, she was doing her hair and everything. And I was like, hey, I just want to tell you that yesterday I just happened to glance over at you and I just had this thought of, gosh, you're so beautiful. And I was like, I know we don't care about that stuff. We talk about like what's on the inside that matters and all that. But I just want you to know you are just beautiful. And when I told her that, she tried to hold it in, but I saw her whole face change. Her whole face lit up. It meant something to her that I said that out loud and I didn't hold that back. And that is a micro gesture. It is a moment of delight that's anchored her back into safety and connection with me. So you could be creative with stuff like this, but I feel like micro gestures are just like, it's a part of attunement. And if we kind of practice this, building this muscle of noticing what we're feeling and thinking, and as believers, what the Spirit is kind of dropping into us, then we can kind of be available to connect and give these gifts to other people that build them up, which I think is a huge part of our job. So I want to zoom in just for a second on one more thing. I want to talk a little bit more about strengthening this attunement muscle, like I just mentioned. So sometimes before we can tune into our kids, we need to practice tuning into ourselves. Attunement is really about exercising the paying attention muscle. Okay. So back when I was talking about that baseball player a minute ago, right? Like they're so attuned. They've worked that muscle so much that they know where the ball's going to go before it's hit, right? We learn this as new parents. Think about, you learn the different sounds that your baby makes. And that means they're hungry. That means they're hurt. That means they're needing their diaper changed. This means they're tired. We know what all of their sounds mean. That's attunement. And so across the lifespan, to just keep working that muscle, not only with your children, but also with yourself. Know how you react when you're stressed. Know all of your things. And this helps you move from a place of reactivity to agency. And each of our kids is different, right? If you've got more than one like I do, you know that you cannot parent them all the same way. They are, and it's so funny, like you're like, how are you guys all completely different? It's just such a beautiful marvel. But it's learning for that middle infielder, you're learning a new batter every time. You study them, you pay attention, you learn how they move through the world and how they react at different phases in their life, right? I've got a couple teenagers now and they react differently than they did when they were children and then when they did when they were toddlers and when they, it's different. So one example of that is for my teenagers, I let them be the ones to initiate hugs. So I will initiate things like I mentioned before where I say like, Hey, what's up? Good morning. How you doing, bud? I'll say, hey, what's up? Glad you're home. I'll initiate those things, but they will initiate the hugs. And it is the sweetest thing ever for my son because he's not a huge talker. He's not a big conversationalist, but he'll just come and lean into me and he'll hug. And I don't let go until they do. That's my rule. I do initiate high fives and handshakes. That's part of attunement. So noticing what level of connection feels right for them and meeting them where they are, that's part of attunement. So here are 2 simple ways to strengthen your attunement muscle. Pause before reacting. When your child shares something, or even when they just walk through the door, take a beat, take a breath, notice their tone, their body language, their mood. Just like that infielder reading the batter, this pause helps you to anticipate instead of reacting or being on the offense. Mirror what you see and hear. Practice reflecting. Practice reflecting. Oh man, you seem tired. Or, gosh, that sounded frustrating. You are not fixing or solving, you're just noticing. And this helps your child feel truly seen. All right. So there you have it, 3.5 rhythms to strengthen your relationship with your child. And here's what I want you to hear, please, from the mountaintops. You don't have to do this perfectly. The number one ingredient, and I mentioned this earlier, for building secure attachment is not perfection. It's not even attunement. It's repair. And that means when we mess up, when we're distracted, when we snap, when we miss the cues, we can always come back. We can always say, I didn't handle that well. Can we start again? Guys, that's some of the most powerful messaging that you can give your kids is for them to know that you are not perfect. Because you know what you're also building in them at that time? You're building their own internal dialogue. So they don't feel like they have to do things perfectly. And when they mess up, they can say, okay, let me try that again. You're building this grace-filled life for them. You don't have to be perfect, and neither do I. What matters is that we can always get back to good. That is such a freeing message for them and for us. Secure attachment is built on presence, attunement, and repair. Okay, and speaking of attachment, next week on the Steadfast Podcast, we're going to dive in to Attachment 101. We're going to talk about how our earliest relationships and even our ongoing relationships with parents across the lifespan shape who we become and also, as believers, how we see God. So this is going to be a really great conversation and I think foundational. And I'd love for you to join me. This is the Steadfast Podcast, and I'm so glad you're here.